Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer. Very, very famous piece of literature, very famous individual. When you go to college, when you look up course selections in those big catalogs of classes, you'll see Shakespeare, you'll see, other literary geniuses, and you will see Chaucer, where there's an entire class on Chaucer. I've never taken the class. I would imagine you study Canterbury Tales, probably do some of his other stuff, more about the man probably. You may or may not be exposed to some of the allusions to Canterbury Tales in today's society. This is an example of a frame story. That is a lit term you'll need to know if you haven't had it already. That's where there's a story within a story. Okay? Kind of like the movie Pulp Fiction is a movie, but there are tons of stories within the movie. And they all kind of relate to different premises, and then they all kind of resolve themselves. So a story within a story. This particular story deals with a whole set of a group of people, just a bunch of individuals, a miller, a preacher, just all these different type of people on a pilgrimage. We talked about in the introductory information, I think it was one of our big idea, number 2 maybe, about religion and pilgrimages. Today people take pilgrimages to Mecca. Others might go to Jerusalem or Bethlehem, if you're Christian, to go to certain places. Catholics, maybe you got to go to Rome, to Vatican, who knows. These individuals went to Canterbury Cathedral in England. That place still stands nowadays. They were going because Thomas à Becket, there's a link on Moodle you should read, he was killed at this location, and he was martyred and eventually became a saint. And these people go to this location in order to pray, see his tomb, leave flowers, do whatever you want to do. There's more information about that. Online, there are some links to Canterbury Cathedral's website. You can take virtual tours, look around at some pictures and videos and stuff, so take some time later on. You may have time at the end of the period, if not today, the rest of the week. But it's really interesting. It's neat that you can go to a place now that you could have gone 1,000 years ago, give or take, 100 years. But kind of neat, significant. Other allusions that, if you saw the movie A Knight's Tale with Heath Ledger, not a great movie, but A Knight's Tale, there's a knight that goes on this journey, and he has a knight's tale. How many of you have seen the movie? Okay. The whole premise is Heath Ledger's this poor person. He's trying to pass off as a knight to win blah, 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 blah. Okay, so a rags to riches type story. And along the way, they stop, and I think he's naked. They find a naked man on the side of the road, and his name is Geoffrey Chaucer. You mean like the author of Canterbury Tales? Yes, exactly like the author of Canterbury Tales. You think that was an accident? No, I don't think it was an accident. Okay. It was no accident either that this individual was very well spoken. He was the one who, before the big jousting, he would get up and he'd give them a big speech and get everybody. I mean, he was a literary genius, and we see that character, Paul Bettany, one of his first big roles. We see the real life Chaucer embodied in that individual. So tons of allusions. On this journey, when they go down a street, they're on horseback, maybe in some sort of carriages or so on. When it's time to stop for the night, if there's not an inn, they stay by a campfire. If there's an inn and they can afford it, they'll go into the inn. They can't turn on the game, take a shower, relax, go to bed. I mean, they can't go to bed, I guess. But they tell stories to pass the time. And that's what the Canterbury Tales is. It's a collection of stories, okay? And they are not connected to one another. Each story is told by a main character from the piece that's on the journey. We will focus on 2 people, the pardoner and the wife of Bath. Those are 2 individuals that we'll focus on, one today and one next time I meet with you. Those individuals tell a story. And as we will see, their story focuses on really what they believe in real life, kind of like a moral to a story, that type of thing. And we will see a lot of that individual reflected in their particular piece and tale, which I think you'll find somewhat interesting. On the bottom of 92, why is this piece so historically relevant, so huge, in the literary world. And one of the main reasons was it really was the first writing in English in a major literary work, Chaucer's piece. Most of the other stuff was French and Latin. That was the predominant established cultures at this time, because remember, England was just people conquering on top of people. You had the Vikings and the Norwegians. You had the Germanic tribes coming up, and people. So there were a lot of different cultures, a lot of different languages, that type of thing. And so the most established in Europe was the French and Latin, which nowadays Latin's considered a dead language. So those were the two languages typically. So for one to be written in English and one of the first major ones, it's kind of important to remember. Others, it gives a lifelike and engaging picture of the various strata of English society during 1300s. It shows these different people, these different professions, how these people act, how they behave. And it's really interesting because we read it now and we can see those characteristics and traits in the present day. So it translates. It's like if you see a movie, if you look at an old movie that's 70 years old, it's one of two things. It doesn't translate well or it translates well. Not translating well means this is just the most boring thing I've ever seen. If it translates well, the story is still relevant, it's still interesting, people still watch it nowadays. People just love Gone with the Wind. It has a great story. Wizard of Oz. I'm sure we've all seen Wizard of Oz. It's still popular nowadays. You might not want to watch it when you hang out with your friends over the weekends, but it has a story, it has a plot people can relate to, it has catchy music, people like it, and it translates well. That's why they re-release it on DVD or whatever the new media is every time. Okay, those translate. Some of the older stuff, not necessarily. This does translate. The thing that I find most interesting is that last couple lines there. He writes in couplets. Okay, if you remember from your rhyming days, that's every couple lines, every 2 lines rhyme. And do you remember affixing letters to lines? A, B, C, exactly. What he does here, it's AA, BB, CC, DD, and on and on and on. Okay, he doesn't alternate, he doesn't skip, he doesn't have different stanza type, weird interlocking things. It's just all couplets. That's amazing. If you told me, Alsmeyer, sit down and write 30 lines, it would take me forever if I want to make it good, right? What about you? Would you do real well with it? I don't know. You start putting parameters on how people write, and it becomes tricky. It becomes a challenge. Well, what if I tell you, well, then there's only 10 or 11 syllables per line. Do you see how I just made that infinitely harder for you? Yeah. 20 lines. Can I give you like 2 lines? I could probably do that. Try 17,000 lines. Doesn't that just blow your mind? 20 or 30 just blew my mind. If I said 100, I'd be like, no way. What about 1,000? No. 10,000? Oh, you're crazy. 17? Shoot me now. It would be nuts. Okay, we are not reading 17,000 lines. We're just focusing on 2 tales. So we'll read a few hundred, maybe 1,000 lines. A little bit more than that probably. But considerably less than what he wrote. But just the literary achievement of that is just astounding to me. Okay, so that's just it. I just find that utterly fascinating. On page 93, the literary term characterization is huge. This is the greatest representative piece of literature that represents the characterization. There are 2 different ways, direct and indirect. When an author explicitly states that this person acts like this, or this person looks like this, or behaves like this, that's direct characterization. Indirect is when you kind of learn it through another character. Okay, we learn something about the main character based on what other people say in the story. All right, so direct and indirect, that's important. That's stuff that you need to know for your test and your final exam. And people tend to forget it between now and 5 months from now for some reason. Even though I'm sure you've had characterization for years. But just somehow figure it out to keep them separate. Direct and indirect. Explicit, implicit. Okay? So that's significant and relevant. And the fact that we're in a frame story, those are literary things to focus on. Page 105, The Wife of Bath. These 20 pages, it's called the Prologue. In essence, it's an introduction to every character that is on the journey. We're not going to read all of them because we're not doing all of them. It might be relevant for you to not necessarily read all 20, but skim through and look at the different people that go on this journey. Pretty much every indentation is a different person. You have a cook, you have the wife of Bath, the pardoner, the knight, the miller, all of these different people. And it wouldn't hurt you to just kind of skim through from time to time throughout the next few days. We're going to read about the wife of Bath, line 455 on page 105. A woman worthy from beside Bath City. We're going to read this. What I want you to do is, as we listen to it, I want you to picture this woman in your head. What does she look like? What is her personality? This is that characterization, that description. It is so important that you understand about her. What does she believe in? How does she behave? How does she act in order to fully grasp the significance and the moral of her tale that we'll do in a little while. Okay? So paint a picture, the physical descriptions, talks about what she does or how she behaves or what she believes. Try to figure out what kind of woman this individual is.
A worthy woman from beside Bath City was with us, somewhat deaf, which was a pity. In making cloth she showed so great a bent, she bettered those of Ypres and of Ghent. In all the parish not a dame dared stir towards the altar steps in front of her. And if indeed they did, so wrath was she, as to be quite put out of charity. Her kerchiefs were of finely woven ground. I dared have sworn they weighed a good 10 pound. The ones she wore on Sunday on her head, her hose were of the finest scarlet red, and gartered tight. Her shoes were soft and new. Bold was her face, handsome and red in hue. A worthy woman all her life. What's more, she'd had 5 husbands, all at the church door. Apart from other company in youth, no need just now to speak of that, forsooth. And she had thrice been to Jerusalem, seen many strange rivers, and passed over them. She'd been to Rome, and also to Boulogne, St. James of Compostela, and Cologne. And she was skilled in wandering by the way. She had gap teeth set widely, truth to say. Easily on an ambling horse she sat, well wimpled up, and on her head a hat, as broad as is a buckler or a shield. She had a flowing mantle that concealed large hips. Her heels spurred sharply under that. In company she liked to laugh and chat, and knew the remedies for love's mischances, an art in which she knew the oldest dances.
Okay, do you have a picture in your mind? Okay, physically, small or large? Decent size? She's not small. Talks about having large hips. Okay, so I guess she could be just bigger on the midsection, but she's probably pretty comfortable. Some of the other clues about her personality, what she's experienced. She's been married how many times? 5? That's significant. That's a lot. I mean, nowadays, if somebody remarries, okay, did a divorce, remarried, okay, 2 marriages. If they go 3, then you start going, well, that's kind of a lot. So you go up to 4, 5, it's quite a bit. Okay? It's important that we understand what her feelings are about love, what her feelings are about marriage, and so on. On the last few lines, it says that, in company she liked to laugh and chat, and here's important, and knew the remedies for love's mischances, an art in which she knew the oldest dances. So she likes to laugh and talk and chat. And she also likes to remedy other people's love life and other people's problems. Do you know somebody like that? Usually likes to try to identify or preach to you about something that you're doing wrong, or how your love life is a mess and how it can be better, and all of these different things. Okay? So imagine this woman, and we get other descriptions about her. With her, her religious belief, her travels. It says she's been to Rome, which is probably one of the places Catholics want to go with the Vatican and all that. She's been to Jerusalem once, nope, twice, 3 times. Because she's better than you. She's more of a Christian because she's been there 3 times. Not necessarily, but you think she probably feels that way? You think she knows more about love than anybody else? She thinks that, doesn't she? That little bit we know, she likes to laugh and talk and tell about how she knows everything about love's mischances, an art in which she knew the oldest dances. Because, honey, I've been around. I've been married 5 times. I have 5 husbands. I know what love is about. And I know religion and da-da-da-da-da. That first page, it talked about how the 4th or 5th line that we read, in all the parish, not a dame dared stir towards the altar steps in front of her. So imagine if she's there kneeling or getting ready to kneel, nobody dare get in her way. Why? Well, maybe she's big. She'll crush him. I don't know. I don't know. But maybe people are intimidated by her. A large-hipped woman, very boisterous. She's had 5 husbands, so she must have some sort of power. She loves to laugh, and she's to chat, so she's probably very opinionated. And some people who aren't as extroverted as that are more introverted and quiet, and they will let that woman walk all over them. And so we see her as a very domineering individual. Okay, that's important to remember. A very domineering individual that has her way with men. Or so she thinks. Okay? So that's significant to remember. So remember all of that. The next gentleman, the pardoner, on page 110. The pardoner is a religious individual. Okay? To pardon somebody is to forgive. If you're talking and I didn't understand you, what do I say? I beg your pardon. Please forgive me. Could you repeat yourself? Please forgive me. And so for a pardoner whose job is to pardon people, they will confess their sins, say these are things I'm doing wrong, and he will grant them a pardon. And his pardons are blessed by the Pope. And so that's pretty significant and important. So once again, as we listen to this, paint a picture in your mind. What does this guy look like? And they spend a lot more time physically describing him. Ladies, is this individual, would you find attractive based on the physical features that they go into details? Look at how descriptive they are. Okay, it's not just, he has yellow hair, but look how descriptive. The look, the feel, the shape, the curl. You know, they go into such great detail in comparing it to things. But also, this man's job, how do people perceive him? Is he a good individual, or is he a bad individual? Well, we all know that if you are you're a religious figure, you have to be good, right? The news shows us that that's not the case. Okay? So, is this individual a good person? Does he do a good job? Do people like him? Is he a nice guy?
He and a gentle pardoner rode together, a bird from Charing Cross, of the same feather. Just back from visiting the court of Rome, he loudly sang, "Come hither, love, come home." The summoner sang deep seconds to this song. No trumpet ever sounded half so strong. This pardoner had hair as yellow as wax, hanging down smoothly like a hank of flax. In driblets fell his locks behind his head, down to his shoulders, which they overspread. Thinly they fell like rat-tails, one by one. He wore no hood upon his head for fun. The hood inside his wallet had been stowed. He aimed at riding in the latest mode, but for a little cap his head was bare, and he had bulging eyeballs like a hare. He'd sewed a holy relic on his cap. His wallet lay before him on his lap. Brimful of pardons come from Rome, all hot. He had the same small voice a goat has got. His chin no beard had harbored, nor would harbor. Smoother than ever chin was left by barber. I judge he was a gelding or a mare. As to his trade, from Berwick down to Ware, there was no pardoner of equal grace. For in his trunk he had a pillow-case, which he asserted was Our Lady's veil. He said he had a gobbet of the sail St. Peter had, the time when he made bold to walk the waves till Jesu Christ took hold. He had a cross of metal set with stones, and in a glass a rubble of pig's bones. And with these relics any time he found some poor up-country parson to astound, in one short day in money down he drew more than the parson in a month or two. And by his flatteries and prevarication made monkeys of the priest and congregation. But still, to do him justice, first and last, in church he was a noble ecclesiast. How well he read a lesson or told a story, but best of all he sang an offertory. For well he knew that when that song was sung, he'd have to preach and tune his honey tongue. And well he could win silver from the crowd. That's why he sang so merrily and loud.
So, a good guy or a bad guy? Good guy? Why? He talks about the church a lot. So anybody that talks about the church has to be good. No. He acts, yeah, exactly. The last 10 or so lines on page 111. I'm sure he has the appearance to most people that he is good. But here's where we get to find kind of the inner workings of this gentleman. Line 697. Anytime he found some poor old country parson to astound, in one short day and money down, he drew more than the parson in a month or two, and by his flatteries and prevarication made monkeys of the priest and congregation. But still, to do him justice first and last, in church he was a noble ecclesiast. How well he read a lesson or told a story. So whenever he would travel around, whenever he saw a poor country or parson, he would stop and he would preach. They would allow him to speak, and in doing so, he would earn more in one day than what that parson could get from people in a month or two. He was able to get a lot of money. Okay? The last few lines talking about when people are singing, he'd have to preach and tune. For best of all, he sang an offertory. For when he knew that when that song was sung, he'd have to preach and tune his honey tongue, and well he could win silver from the crowd. That's why he sang so merrily and so loud. He was able to elicit money. So here's that song, and he starts singing. Everybody thinks he's going, oh, hallelujah. They think he's just singing for God and everything, but he's just singing, thinking about that money and how I'm going to have an opportunity to talk and get the money from the people. All right, it mentions on the previous page how he has some pardons from the Pope. Okay, if you've seen movies or if you are Catholic, you go and confess your sins, and they tell you to do whatever in order to be absolved of your sins. But now, if we go to a greedy individual, like in this story, and we say we've committed these sins, we want to be forgiven, we want to go to heaven, blah blah blah. He might be okay, but it's going to what? It's going to cost you something. It's going to cost you something. And imagine this guy's thought of up there singing, up there speaking. He's like, I'm going to tell all you people about heaven and hell and how you are all going to hell and you're all sinners because you do this and you do this, or you've had these thoughts. And at the end, if he really did a good job, can you imagine all those people standing in line waiting to talk to him for pardons? Yes, that'll be $10. There you go. Yes, $20. Ooh, $100. Don't do that again. But if you do, come and talk to me. Kind of repeat business, right? This individual is what we call a hypocrite. And we will see that exemplified through his story in a little while. On the outside, they say that he's a noble ecclesiast. He's a noble follower. Everybody looks up to him. He's had a conference with the Pope. Okay, he's just come from Rome, a very upstanding man. But they don't know truly his motions, and his greed is there, even though he's preaching to people about not being greedy. So is he an attractive individual? No. Probably not. The bulging eyes, the voice like a goat. Okay, the hair that reminds somebody of a rat tail hanging down over his shoulders. A smooth face. His hat. I don't know if he's bald. I can't remember. But he doesn't wear a cap on his hat instead of the big hood. Something interesting I like here is his wallet lay before him on his lap, brimful of pardons come from Rome. If you ever have, guys, if you're ever traveling in a city and you're worried about getting pickpocketed with your wallet, do you leave it in your back pocket? No, where do you put it? Front pocket. Right? Front pocket. You keep things near you where you can protect them instead of protect them. Okay? I just find it interesting, his wallet, his bag, where is it sitting at? It's not hidden somewhere, it's on his lap. He knows what's important. That might not be overflowing with money, but it's overflowing with pardons, and that's as good as money. It talked about how on the second page he has all these different relics that he says, here's a pillowcase that he says is Our Lady's veil. Our Lady could be Mary, some sort of actual historical relic. He has something from St. Peter, a goblet of the sale, a piece of cloth that he can talk to people. Look how holy I am, and look at these relics that I have. It's just money. In old TV shows and old movies, if you saw people heading west, the old Wild Wild West, people would stand on the back of their big covered wagon like, yeah, I see you guys are all balding. Here, drink this mineral water 3 times a day for a week for $20, and your hair will come as full as, as my hair. And he takes it off, and he has all this long hair. I was bald 3 weeks ago, folks. Well, you obviously know he's a shyster. But they would buy it, they would buy it, they would buy it. They'd go away, try it, it wouldn't work. They'd come back. Well, guess who's not there anymore? Guess who can go and do all of these things, and he's gone. But all he has to do, he's not selling them goods that he has to back up. He's just selling them mental, right? Mental absolution. You get them thinking a certain way, you're set. You're set. And if you're really, really good with the word, you can get them to say and do whatever you want and pay whatever you want. Okay? So not a really good guy. Not a really good human being. All right? Really profiting on this. And that's important to note because his story deals with greed and deals with absolution and, your payment for a life of sin.